Let's see if this works. Hello. Should be live. It should be working. Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Oh, right, and today we're doing questions till the brew runs out, because honestly, and I say this in the nicest possible way, my brain is mildly fried after the day I've already had. Yeah, it's been one of those days already. It really has been one of those days already. It's been, you know, it's... how do I put it politely? It's been interesting. It really has been interesting. So how is everyone doing? How are we all doing? Let's engage your audience, start Q&A. Sorry. I do not recommend, and this is my honest scenario, I do not recommend spending half the night rebuilding a house and then spending another half night rebuilding another house, or rather rebuilding the house again in a different way. Yay, it worked. Questions are working. Hello everyone. Hello Steve Clarke. Hello Paul Amos. Hello Carl Westbrook. Hello Runon. Hello Peter Dawson. And Tasha Rochelle. Hello De Brock. Hello Nights to Go From. Yeah, my mum was fine. It's just, it's when visiting theoretically finished that... Look, to explain things, when she was in A&E, I did the through night stuff. And quite happily did the through night stuff. Because, let's be honest, it's the advantage of having a functioning insomniac in the family, it makes sense. However, now she's in a ward, and being looked after on a ward, and especially as it's the lady section of the ward, well, the early morning shift when she's if we do go in and help her early in the morning and later in the evening, they're usually done by my sister, because her other ward mates are also getting ready at those times, and they tend to prefer my sister is there, not me, be the one helping my mum at that time. So I do in sort of the middle of the day, and so today I finished my live on Twitch at about 2 o'clock. I got there about 2:30, and I have to admit I did get home about 7, but I was hungry. I hadn't had any food, so I made this 8 o'clock to give me time. So Mum's okay. Hello Renche, hello De Brock, hello, sorry to hear about all that, there's all sorts of discussion going. And Mum did order me to do Bruships. She's ordered me not to stop doing the videos. I've got to do them on time, and I sit there and go, yeah Mum, that's great, but I'm also rebuilding the house, because before she can come home, we have to have an occupational therapy assessment, I think they're called, checking whether the house is safe for her to come back to. Which it is, but the thing is, of course it was safe, because she was wandering around, she wasn't that hurt by the house, and she's been wandering around in the house. But their rules for what is safe and my mum's rules for what is safe are different things. For example, my mum believes she should be sleeping upstairs. They are worried about her doing the stairs until she's better. My mum has basically been of the belief that certain things like floorboards, etc., which weren't lining up, could be left till we'd moved, because the idea was we move, as I've discussed before, if we do move because of my mum and sister's medications and needs of basic things, the plan was always to buy the next house, move them, set that all up, get that all sorted out, move them into there, and then do this one up and sell it. Make sure this one's all nicely sort of cleaned up and everything. And so that was when the things were being left for. Well, no, they'd like them done. So I have been cutting up carpet, because the other option was to completely empty out the room, my mum's bedroom, so that, I could get the carpet out, and frankly, there was nowhere for all the stuff to go. There was just nowhere for all the stuff to be moved to. So instead, it's been a case of precision cut up carpet, get out a floorboard, and hope that works out for us, and replace floorboards. So yeah, I had a fun trip to Wix this morning. Hello, Timmy Locker. Hello, Stephen Richards. Hello, The Rock. Hello, Tress Ford. Hello, Gostratus. Hello, Seneca Nero. Hello, Dan Freeman. Hello, Simon Devitt. Hello, Tasha Tuvashell. Hello, Leslie Mitchell. Hello. Hello, Runon. Hello, Bug Guy 229. Hello, DG40. Hello, everyone. And hello, Mark Harkness. Hello, Wayne. Hello, Alt92. Hello, everyone. Actually, to be fair, she isn't going to need any equipment, really. What they're mainly talking about going, well, it was quite interesting having this conversation, because whenever she's needed stuff, as a rule, we've gone and got it for her. We are not a rich family. That just not our sort of thing. But in case of, we're not a stupid family either. If you need something for your health to support you and make your life more sensible and viable to live, is going to be procured. So it's one of the interesting things they've had that have turned up is my mum's been using they wanted her to use the Zimmer frame in the ward, or she's used to walking with a stick. And they go, no, Zimmer frame's far better for you. And it really isn't, because my mum has arthritis in her hands. And while she can still do her shooting, she isn't that good at leaning weighted pressure on them. And so we have special grips for her walking sticks. So actually using the Zimmer frame has hurt her. And now she's back using the walking stick. And it's sort of a case of, so you guys have made a study of this. Yes, we have. We don't know everything. We do listen to the experts, but that's the thing. We listen to them and we go and do it, and they're almost shocked and we're going, oh, the physio's face when they go, oh, you had these sticks recommended to you 5 years ago. Yes. How long have you had them? 5 years. Oh. And so the physio's sort of looking at us going, I went, do people honestly not get the things? You recommend they procure them and they don't. No. They just go and get the standard walking stick or something like that. Oh, well, that's just not us. Oh, so that means, oh yeah, she shouldn't be using the Zimmer frame. She should be walking with that then, if you've got that. We just presumed you didn't. And what I found funny was when they were making the assessment, these particular walking sticks, and Mum usually uses one, occasionally when she's feeling not well she uses two, but usually uses one, were actually sitting next to Mum on the seat she was sitting in while they were doing the assessment. So if they'd actually looked at it, they'd have seen that she had the proper walking sticks. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, if you look up, you'll find there are handles, walking stick handles, which are made to fit inside the wrist and support the wrist properly. And they're sort of, if you've got an arthritic wrist, they're not that expensive. They're not much. In fact, you can get them as the collapsible versions that actually use what Mum has. They can be taken apart and sort of done all that stuff into a little bag if she wants to. And I know they're not cheap, but again, it's the sensible thing to have if you have arthritis and you have to use a walking stick. And I just was sitting there with the poor physio, because the physio is so used to people having not listened and not followed their advice that they don't even notice when someone has listened and has followed their advice. It makes me feel very bad for Dan Freeman, because honestly, if that's what's happening for physios, goodness, where people can physically see it, goodness knows what he gets the joy of as a medic. Goodness knows. But Mum's doing okay. We're hoping to get her home tomorrow. I just need to have fixed the floorboards, so she didn't trip hazards as far as they're concerned. And under their criteria, under the council's criteria, it's a 5mm gap is acceptable as not being a trip hazard. I think it was the criteria. On the NHS gap, it's a 2mm. And that meant I had to do something. And then when I took up the floorboards, the carpet, I found that some of the floorboards were absolutely atrocious. So, yeah. Yeah, Stafford, but the thing is, it's not so much they're ignoring it, it's just they're so used to people ignoring them, they don't even look for you to have actually followed their advice. Because that's the rule is that people don't. And as Dan says, there are not people not following advice. It's the thing is, here's the thing, if you've gone to the doctor, if you've gone to a medical professional, you're seeking their professional advice for your health, you think you'd follow it. Oh, good lord. Steve Clarke, you just got told off by spamming emotes. I'm not sure why. I have no idea why Nightbot just blocked you. Right. So what is your opinion of the playground antics of China and Philippines in the South China Sea? Honestly, it's going to continue going on, because the Philippines, all the international laws, etc., are on the side of the Philippines. But China's using the might is right. And it's one of those scenarios where, frankly, look, the trouble is for China in this scenario is that often the might has proved right in history. But the trouble is, as has been shown in Ukraine, there are times when allowing a country to might is right its way through and dominate things is overlooked, and there are times when it serves everyone's interests to not overlook it, to keep a restraint and keep them focused on something else. And unfortunately for China, this is currently serving everyone else's interests to not let them push it around, because also the South China Sea is an important trade route, and that's the trouble with the China. I would say this is a small problem with China, in that they both say they don't want to take on the role of global policeman and maritime policeman. Okay, fine. But they want to take over control of a larger swathe of the world's waterways. And that doesn't serve people's interests. So even people who might be on their side and might let them, are not going to be actively on their side, because they don't want those waterways to be unpatrolled or to become a might is right area. So that's the problem for China. It's how they present their case. And in this scenario, their basic claim for the South China Sea is Admiral Zheng He sailed through this area several hundred years ago, therefore it is ours. Doesn't really wash, because honestly, if we were going on that policy, then the Royal Navy in Britain could claim quite a lot of the world's surface. So could the Spanish and the Portuguese. And they have better records of it, because The joy of joys is that Zheng He's voyages, one of the reasons why we have so little information about it, we are using archaeology to try and discover where it went, is because the records were destroyed. You know, there is a good case to say that the Admiral Zheng He's voyages probably reached the west coast of Africa. Possibly even the Mediterranean. We have no idea. They were large ships and they sailed. But the thing is, their records, because they decided they didn't want to do any more maritime ventures, were destroyed to stop people, so people wouldn't be attracted to the idea of it. But either way, just because you sail there doesn't mean you own it. And just because it's called... Nice way, the British called the English Channel the English Channel. The French would be really, really annoyed if we said, well, that means we own it all. Britain would be really annoyed if the Irish said, well, the Irish Sea is ours. Britain would go, nope, that doesn't work. So it's just, yeah, sorry. So there are some problems. Yeah, I got up the carpet last night, and one of the floorboards was literally cracked into 30 pieces. So, whilst there are things which can allow you to repair floorboards through the carpet, I don't think there's anything. I've bought new floorboards. I'm going to be using my jigsaw and cutting them up later this evening, and then probably putting it down at some point. I've also got a whole load of rock wool to put in the floors, because I found out the gaps between the floors and the ceilings on between our first and our ground floor is is completely empty and open air. Now, Sharon, why is the American hypocrisy with impressment forgotten? Because that isn't the mantra the American media... Well, when I say the media, the American cultural memory presents, and therefore their media presents. Let's be honest, it's kind of like the idea of slaves and galley slaves. Okay? Galley slaves are a Barbary pirate thing. And even then, they're not as prevalent as people sometimes make out. But they are certainly not an ancient Greek and Roman thing, because, as I've said many times before, you do not want slaves on your ships when your average form of combat is ship-to-ship boarding. When the basis of your combat is ship-to-ship boarding, not cannon fire, not artillery, but ship-to-ship boarding and fighting, weapon to weapon, but within close range, you don't want there to be a large pool of extremely fit, having to be well-fed people aboard, because they're your engine. If you don't maintain them, you won't go well, who, the moment they're freed, will be wrapping their chains around your necks. It doesn't work out as a sensible policy. Look, so, nicest way, lots of these things are overlooked and put to one side because they just don't jive with the cultural memory of history, with what we want to remember. Or rather, what is wanted to be remembered. Michael Gooch, which navy do you think is the most underrated navy of World War I? Austrian. Blackman Maximus, at the start of World War II, all of the Royal Navy carrier conversions get turned into Lexington-class carriers, with British armaments, equipment and aircraft. How does this affect everything? Well, if you're talking about all the carrier conversions, you're talking about HMS Eagle, HMS Furious, HMS Argus, HMS Courageous, and HMS Glorious. So if you suddenly have 5 Lexington-style carriers, the Royal Navy is very happy, because let's be honest, even if you that's going to give 3 of them a massive air group boost, and 2 of them a fairly decent air group boost. Now, admittedly, they're not quite as they would do, but they'll probably adapt them by... Actually, they probably end up going in and having their 8-inch guns removed if they're still on there. But if they're not still on there, if they're armed with 4.5-inch guns, etc., and British style, etc., and British style engines, the Royal Navy is suddenly very happy, and the Royal Navy suddenly has very capable strike carriers. And the only baby carrier it's left with is Hermes. That's going to be a very different World War II. Because, let's be honest, if we consider the loss of... Well, Argus suddenly becomes a very useful carrier. Furious becomes an even more useful vessel than she was. Eagle becomes a really quite a nice, useful asset. That's just a massive improvement. Yes, they're not the British type of carrier, but the British will take that quite happily. My turn. If the final two King of the Fifth were always to be Anson and Howe, then what's the third one supposed to be? Duke of York. There's an interesting debate about that because King George V, Prince of Wales. Princess of Wales was named when it was supposed to be good. For the Prince of Wales was supposed to be the Prince of Wales, and the Prince of Wales was going to inherit the throne. And then, of course, he went off with Wallace Simpson. And so the Duke of York did. And that meant they added the Duke of York in. And that's now how moved down. So real question you have to ask is which admiral was going to be after Howe? And let's consider which is the next ship named after an admiral. That'd be Blake. Gives you a bit of a clue as to what my strong suspicion is where they were going to be. Alsowski, now giving orders his battleships to steam ahead and do a night bombardment after the 2 strikes on Pearl Harbor. What would be the effect of such a strike? Well, don't take this the wrong way, but they've got to hold off for a whole day before going in. Because they're striking early in the morning. But they're not at night. So, if they did it, that would actually cause a massive panic in the Americans. But it would also probably... It's the one thing which they might actually be able to deal with. And by that time, they will be well awake. No, does anyone have a copy of Midway, The Battle Doomed Japan? I'm trying to run down a reference from Pacific Crucible. Not on me. Senator Canero, firstly, I have not seen the movie, and secondly, Napoleon would never make such a crude statement. Blackman Maximus, what if the only 27,000 tons of the carrier conversions count in the treaty, with all the other tons above being above the limit, not counted towards building displacement? It makes everyone a little bit... It makes the Americans very much happy, it makes the Royal Navy very much annoyed. Because the entire... Another methodology the Royal Navy had for making sure the Americans didn't have enough ships and didn't have the same size force as them was the fact that the way the treaty was written. So, Clarke, I'm guessing most have seen the Drax library videos. How do you prefer to organise your research materials? Things like the economic books, etc., references to politics and things which are there, so those things which I have to quickly grab occasionally. The books usually around me on this level are books I'm using for current research. The books above me are the ones which I have for ongoing projects going further away. The ones which are further away from me are the ones I grab least often, and the same higher up. So this is the ones which I'm not using for current projects. And the books down below are usually actually the ones which are even less used often. They're usually very specific technical references. And then the books in my bedroom are things which are of a strategic sort of discussion, sort of nature in their form usually, And the books which are in the various boxes, I can't really speak to because I'm actually not quite sure what's in some of the boxes. I know what books I have, I just am not quite sure which box they are. Sometimes I have to go hunting for them. And this is the another whole reason for moving, so I can actually have enough space to get all my books out. Cascading. Dr. Clarke, can I ask why the Chinese theatre in World War II seems to not be expanded on, say, like the European or Pacific theatre? It depends which sources you're reading. If you're reading English language sources, it's very, very hard to get. If you're reading Chinese language sources, there is actually some decent stuff. If the US had handed over the Philippines back to the Philippine people in 1940, how would that affect the relation of things between the US and Japan? Japan would have waited till exactly 3 months after the Americans had withdrawn from the Philippines to fabricate a reason to invade the Philippines. What if the Invincible class carriers had deck edge lifts and a full length deck? How much more aircraft could they fit? The Invincible class did, well, I suppose they did start. By the end of life, they had a full length deck. Pretty much, as far as you can go, because nicest way, you always have some space bow end and stern end which you cannot use. That people like to talk about it. It's a full length deck, and you sit there and go, "Is it really? How about the bit underneath the bit of the bow which goes? Well, of course that doesn't count." Yeah. Okay. So there's a full length deck and there's a full length deck. But if they had deck edge lifts, and they had. That would probably have added about another 6 or so aircraft. But, and this is the point, the main reason it's going to add those aircraft is you're going to have to reorganize the ship to do it. And honestly, you're going to have to lengthen the ship a bit as well to get it sorted out. Have you seen Sal's latest video on the situation Red Sea? No, I've been in hospital for the last few hours, and there is not decent Wi-Fi now. Nice one. So when did the Royal Navy determine that the 4 Orions, 3 King George V's, 4 Iron Dukes, and 2 Lions and Tiger battlecruiser would need to be gone by the start of the 1930s? About the point at which they realised the treaties were going to get rid of them. Actually, no, to be fair, they had that before then. If you look at their plan of replacement, those vessels are gone by the 1930s if they're keeping up the G3, N3 evolution constructions. So, yeah, they'd be gone soon. Age of gunboat diplomacy never left us, Stafford. What if the Suez Canal was a separated area like Gibraltar? Be interesting, because technically Gibraltar is, of course, an international waterway. It's just it can be de facto closed. Reading a book on what is supposed to be on the maritime struggle in the Mediterranean and Middle East. He's got the Med, but is falling short on Red Sea, Persian Gulf, and Eastern Med. Any recommendations? Eastern Fleet is fairly decent for those areas. Dash Shell. With regards to serious study, how can you tell if you're really smart and knowledgeable, or if you're a case of Dunning-Kruger in action? Have an argument with Drac. So anyway, another one of my modernize it questions. How would you modernize a medieval cog for a modern 21st century combat? Start off by crying? No, it would have to be some sort of stealth ship, and frankly, you'd first need to put in some power generation. Add in some engines. There's not much space, so it's probably going to be a diesel engine. You want maximum of fuel, etc. And mount some 20mm cannon. I don't know. Could you? Max would probably take us a 40mm cannon. Maybe some missiles. But that could probably set you alight, so you'd have to be very careful how you structure those. Maprosa, best twin-engine maritime attack aircraft. Are you talking propeller, or if it's propeller, it's my favourite is the Bristol Beaufighter. But if you're talking modern jet aircraft, I'm fairly keen on the A6 Intruder. Nicer 6831. Why did Chile not consider the option of, instead of asking for a second battleship, they ordered from Rich, but buying a new, better battleship to replace it? Finances. Too longer. What if there weren't the Great Kanto earthquake in 1933? What would the IGN fleet look like in 1930s? Not much difference. They just have a Magi and a Kagi as their aircraft carriers instead of Kaga and a Kagi. Longmaster, did the Royal Navy have plans for carriers pre-Washington Naval Treaty that are not conversions beside Eagle? Eagle was a conversion. Hermes was the built from scratch one. Eagles were converted from a battleship. The Royal Navy did have plans. They were just slowly going through them. They just weren't really bothered about it. And honestly, the only reason they convert... They didn't actually want to convert Courageous and Glorious. It's just that BT had a hard-on for it, is the only way I can describe it. I haven't read the documents. Been playing too much of World War Warships Blitz. In your opinion, when should you stop trying to launch aircraft because of turnaround and just accept the fact there's going to be a gun duel? Never. Never. Because aircraft are your major thing for keeping the enemy busy. Now, sir, if the British got their 40 County class, 20 new light cruisers, and kept the 2E and 8D class, would the original timeline 13C class be relegated to reserve and the other 15 being scrapped? Probably, but actually it depends on when they've reached that peak, because they might well start converting the C class into AA cruisers earlier, especially as they can keep overage cruisers. Well, like Masters, with the age of carriers coming, the year of the carriers coming, will we be doing the carrier battles in history? Yes. Reed Jutland, has anyone ever found a reasonable explanation for why BT failed to open fire outside the range of the first Guardi group, and instead closed until the Germans opened fire first? BT. Now, sir, would it be accurate to say the stereotypes about countries wouldn't exist if there wasn't some truth to them? I would say they wouldn't necessarily exist if they didn't play into them. To an extent, countries do play up some of their stereotypes in the way they train and teach their people, especially to act. Not that I want to take an American carrier into line of battle, but how would an armoured carrier hold up against surface engagement compared to the American counterparts? Well, it has slightly more protection, and it has its firepower, but let's be honest, neither are really designed for surface combat. So yeah, it probably holds up slightly longer, but both of them are going to quickly become smouldering wrecks on the top, and depending on their various areas of control to prevent them from sinking. So Clarke, what are in your opinion the 5 biggest innovations in ship design since 1945? Vertical launch systems for missiles, I would say, is a major one. Since 1945. The trouble is, so many of the ideas that are now dominant in our scenarios are actually around before 1945. I'd say stealth is since 1945, so I'd say I'll add stealth in. 5 biggest innovations. And I'd say the CIC, the Command Information Center. below decks. That's bringing the information together, because it's the sort of the post 1945 world that it becomes we're taking part in battles far outside of what the eye can see, and beyond the speed at which the brain can process at the ranges that it can see. So you need some sort of artificial sensor system to allow you to detect out and work it out. Out of that, you've got GPS and especially the lovely azimuth thrusters. Blackwood Maximus, having seen many other nations' designs for early armoured carriers without naval treaties, would there be even a distinction between an unmanned versus armoured carrier? There wouldn't be. In the nicest way, you would have seen something closer to the Midway Audacious classes being produced. Midway, Audacious, Malta sort of thing. That's what everyone would have gone towards, because it's only because of the treaties they have to decide. The Royal Navy wouldn't have had the strike carrier and the fleet carrier. They'd have just had the larger carriers and the smaller carriers. The Americans wouldn't have done some of what they did. Ooh. Excuse me a second. Just been sent a message by my sister to check the greenhouse door. She's worried because she's still with Mum. Quiet! Good boy. Quiet. Sorry about that. Family. They're having fun, they're worried about things back home, which is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. It means they're paying attention. Now, should the British have built the quadruple gun turret coaster batteries during the war years to help them learn how to do it properly when they did King George V? Probably. In the nicest way, anything they could have done that could have kept the skills going for turret manufacture would have been sensible. I mean, I would have done a sort of low-rate production of turrets for shore batteries, and I'd have just slowly worked through things like it'd been just quite simple. I'd have gone, right, I'm going to put four turrets in at Gibraltar this year, and then next year 4 at Singapore, and then 4 at Malta, and 4 at, you know, Malta could take up 2 years worth, and you could stick 8 there. It's brilliant. Similar with Singapore. You know, you think about it, if you could even make them every 2 years. But you think about it, in sets of 4, you could have kept those facilities going and have put around the empire. If you stop, you know, after, if you do, keep up with triple 16-inch guns, okay? 16-inch gun turrets. A, you're going to keep developing the 16-inch gun. B, you're going to keep putting them in. If you think about it, if you're building 4 of those a year, every couple of years, and from about 1924 to, let's say, 1938, no, 1926 to 1938, you've got 12 years. You could have put 24, since, you know, 12 years, If you're doing that 6, yeah, that's 24. 24 of those guns, those turrets around the Empire. If you put 4 of them in Singapore, 4 of them in Gibraltar, you could have put 8 and 8 in Cyprus, in sort of Malta and Gibraltar, Malta and Singapore, 4 in Gibraltar. That's 16, 20. That's 16 and 20 of them. You could have another 4 in the UK, 4 around the UK. Or you could have put 4, 4, and 4, and it put it sort of, done 6 4s and done 4 at Dover, 4 at, I'd say probably Portsmouth, maybe Plymouth. Probably let's go for Plymouth because that gives you protection down there, and 4 it's covering Scapa Flow. You wouldn't put them at Hong Kong. Well, in the nicest way, Hong Kong is going to fall. There is no doubt Hong Kong's going to fall, so you wouldn't do Hong Kong. But if you think about it, if you do it all 12 years, you do 4 each year, you having 4 each year, that's 12 sites you've secured. In which case, you could do Cape Town, you could do various other parts of the UK. There are lots of sites you could have done it, and they could all had 4 triple turrets with 12 16-inch guns. And if you think about it, if you're producing that many guns and turrets in that period, you're going to be improving them. So by the time you get to World War II, by the time you're ordering the Lion or King George V, you're probably on the Mark III 16-inch gun. And you're probably also looking at something which is a lot better than what's on Nelson and Rodney. Yeah, I will apologise now for build trumps. With all the stuff that's been going on, we haven't managed to organise some build trumps. Hopefully we're going to get some recording in next week. Plus, why didn't the Royal Navy utilise a G3 N3 update when they restarted the capital ship construction rather than going for the King George V's? You have lots of design ideas going in there, but broadly speaking, the person you're dealing with is Chatfield, who wants it to look like a proper battleship. Gazberg, what if the Germany and Soviets run a joint carrier program on the Caspian Sea on the lines of US's Wolverine? Some people get killed when the Germans invade the Soviet Union. Draconode, your thoughts on recent museum ships scrappings in the US? I'm never keen on scrapping museum ships. Potentially, if the Oceanic had been built, things could have been interesting, but forcing the British government to upgrade the yard's supporter, possibly not. But they could have certainly cajoled them and backed them into a corner to do so. Sam Thompson, if instead of reactivating ours under Reagan, they built new heavy cruisers to escort carriers and shut the Kirovs, what would they look like? And would the Iron respond in kind? They could get the 8, at that point they could still get the 8-inch auto out of storage and develop from that. So expect them to have those. Expect them to have a lot of missiles, and expect them to weigh in probably about the same amount as the Kirovs. In fact, they could even be nuclear powered. As for the Royal Navy, well, the Royal Navy would be doing a cruiser program at that point. And they could end up doing a sort of split build of Invincible class carriers, i.e. the through-deck cruisers, and the missile and gun cruisers using the same hulls. So no, question related to those turrets, considering that shore mountings will be relatively shallow, no room for really tall turret support structure and bunkers, would that production help? Why wouldn't they have room? Let me explain this. If you're building them for ship turrets, you would build the bunker so it could accommodate the ship turrets. You know, if that's what you're keen to sort of build. Yes, it's not going to be it's not going to be not going to be necessarily ideal. It's going to be more expensive, but if you're considering a ship's turret normally goes down 2 to 3 decks, that's not that far, and honestly, that's labour and concrete. And in 1920s, 30s Britain, that's employment of people who would otherwise be out on the dole. If you're talking about Singapore, etc., that's employment of very cheap labour. That's pretty much it. So yeah, you know, I agree in terms of traditional and what you'd be normally talking about as a land-based mounting. Yes, but if you're building this as a methodology of preserving the skills for the ship-based mountings, you build the facilities to accommodate the ship-based mountings. Okay. Let me get out one of my books up here. Islanders are almost to the keel. That's Cressy. No, I don't need Cressy. I need British capital ships. Now, you are quite right that the supports and structures that support and maintain, support a turret within a hull will go right down to the keel. But in terms of the operational cage and the things which actually need to go deep down into a ship, that's Dreadnought. We don't need Dreadnought. We want something different design-wise, because we want something to show it as it was by that point. This is a good book, by the way. This is a fun book to read. It's Agincourt. Now, if I go this, you'll notice that the actual cage for the guns goes down about 2 decks. And then there's more material to go down further to bring up stuff from the magazines, etc. below them. So it totals in about 4 decks, with systems to support that lifting mechanism below them. So that's sort of what you'd be looking at. So yeah, it's viable. Primark 359. Do any dry docks have the expertise to work on museum ships like Olympia, or do they pretty much only have bad options? They could work on her. It's going to take some skill to rebuild some of the skills, but it's not impossible to do. And there are options. You can always make it fake rivets and weld it. Do imagine if you do build it, the specs that actually increase the viability of a land-based fort, the ship specs actually increase the viability of the land-based gun fort. Pretty much. Now, during the Cold War, NATO analysts were originally terrified by the MiG-25 until they figured out it was a plane built around an engine. Any World War I or World War II examples of ships that were overestimated? The entire German capital ship fleet? There's lots of ships which are overestimated. There's lots of aircraft which are overestimated. But honestly, the interesting thing about the MiG-25, also to me, is that it continues the practice of quite a lot of World War II and World War I aircraft, which they're basically built around the engine. The engine's what gives them the power. June Patchin, is the Royal Navy considering development of their lightweight torpedo into an ASROC equivalent? I don't think so at the moment, but I would never say never, because the Royal Navy has a habit of, even more than other navies, not advancing things till it's pretty much done. Hendrik Boover, hello. If the German Kaiser was able to push naval construction onto fusing the battleship and battlecruiser lines, what kind of displacement and layout and speed do you think they would have used? Probably would be aiming for 26 to 26-ish knots. 25, 26-ish knots, enough to sort of be fast enough than the British battle line, and probably would still go to. The interesting thing about the Germans and their armament is that it seems to be all over the place in many ways, but it's mainly because they're often being forced to make decisions against what they want. What they want is equivalent firepower for their battle cruisers and their battleships, and then they realise their engines, their various systems, they can't afford the weight for equivalent firepower, so they have to go for something different. This is what causes people to be interesting when they start going, well, you know, the German battlecruisers traditionally had less capable guns than their battleship counterparts. So you sort of go, no, they didn't. No, you're looking at you're looking at the end-of-line designs, and then they do. The end-of-line designs do, but World War I, those designs aren't necessarily being choices made of desire or fear, or their belief, their development program. Those are choices necessarily not made more of necessity. Ruthlessly efficient. Hello. How good was Littorio class battleships compared to the other countries had at the time? Very good. Very capable ships. They are absolutely Mediterranean specialists, but therefore, in their sphere of the Mediterranean, they are absolutely excellent. They are adapted to that. If you took them out into the North Atlantic, they would have a nightmare of a time. But in the Mediterranean, they're going to be dominant. Rapper worst example of ship design by committee? Oh, literal combat ship. I'm sorry. If you're if you're building a sea power state from scratch, what real world religion would you select to best facilitate this? No offense to anyone. I'm trying to think of a suitably naval religion or maritime religion. I'm tempted by Sikhism, but I think I'm going to have to stick with Christianity. I was thinking about Shinto and various forms of Buddhism as well, but yeah, I think I'm going to stick with Christianity just because of the walking on water and the various other motifs around it. Now, sir, we talk about all these post-World War I British N3 dreadnoughts, G3 battlecruisers, these impressive ships. Would they really have lived up to the hype had they been built? Well, we never really will know that because they weren't built. And that's the problem. But saying that, they also are the fruit of a lot of development, a lot of thought, and a lot of expertise. So if they have a choice of either they're going to turn out to be fundamentally flawed and absolutely terrible, or be really, really good. Nothing in between. And I would say, yeah. What kind of shore defenses did the Japanese have on the home islands during World War II? Quite a lot of defenses, really. That's another reason to add into the whole problem of invading Japan. Peter Dawson, how about building a few dry docks for ocean liners, 1,200 by 1,500 feet? 1,200 by 150 feet per dock would reduce unemployment during the Depression. It would have been very helpful. Steve Clarke, if you're building lots of turrets, do you build improved Napoleonic Martello towers to mount them at sea? Potentially. Potentially, if that's what you want to, if that's what you think you might, it's a good position to mount them, that's what you do. I would say you want to mount them in a position that you could also provide air defense to. So, if I was doing the sort of something at sea, and it was mounted as on top of a turret, I would probably be having it sort of flared out with positions kind of like you see in a sort of a more Henry VIII sort of era sea fort or artillery fort, rather than a Martello tower, and then have on each of the sort of bastions that come out from it and go down, have them have 4.5-inch gun, or alternatively, have the central tower. Have the three things going around, and have each of those ones have a turret on them, and then on the central tower have 4.5-inch guns and 40mm. Or you could have those on the things that around. Either way, it could be interesting. It could be interesting. Hello, Gareth the Brit. Knights of I mean, look, don't make me do a 2-hour video on how well Christianity worked for Knights of Joel as a naval religious doctrine. Please do, we'll enjoy it. But I would add, that's another reason why, basically, our plans, roughly, for ship shape, and we have got to talk and sort things out, and there's various things we've got to sort things out, are next year Scandinavia, which we've been talking about. Year after that, hopefully Japan, if everything's going to plan. And the year after that is crusading islands of the Crusades in the Mediterranean. And literally that one's for Gareth the Brit, because basically we all want to do Malta anyway, etc. And we all know that doing Malta and those other islands, it's going to take all four of us, and it's going to be absolutely nuts. I think for that one, for us to get it all done, we are going to have to go. Here is our itinerary where we're going to be. If anyone would like to join us over this period of months in these islands, please just turn up. You're more than welcome. What is the best book on the Victorian Navy? Major themes could be an empire, capital ships, or any other topic. Honestly, the best book is probably Andrew Lambert's various books on the Victorian Navy. He did a few. There's the battleships one, there's the admirals one. Those are good works on the Victorian Navy. Okay, now so I'm not sure if you can answer. People are worried about the second Trump president term turning USA into a dictatorship. As a historian, how reasonable or unreasonable are these fears? Okay. I'm going to say this. The US has a very strong codified constitution. They have a very strong capability in that constitution. And they have... The fact is, whilst the president has often been described as a foreign policy dictator, they are a domestic policy persuader, at best. So, honestly, yes, a Trump presidency could be a second Trump presidency could be interesting. I'm not sure, and I would like to point this out. In pure terms, for the rest of the world, from a peace perspective, there is an advantage to having someone who is slightly nutty as the US president. And if anyone wants to try and disagree with that, let's be honest. The slightly nutty here is covering a lot of things for Trump not exactly being your regular person. In that, he's very hard to predict, which means that a lot of people stopped behaved very well while he was president because they weren't sure what his He might do nothing. He might ignore what you do completely and not bother about it. He might send the overwhelming might of the entire US Armed Forces to smash down your doors. You were never quite sure which one it was going to be, so everyone decided to play nice with him. That kind of helped the world for a bit. But this is the thing, I'm not sure what a second presidency will be like. So all I will say is, I don't think he'd become a dictator, because the US Constitution is very strong. And whilst people often go, well, they're packing the court, they're packing this, they're packing that. The thing is, in my experience, the court is very jealous of its own power, from historical study. The Senate is very jealous of its own power. And the one thing you can rely on lawyers and politicians and people who go into publicly prominent positions usually being very jealous over their own power, because they are the ones who know how to use that power for best, and they don't like to hand it over to anyone else. So based on that, I don't think it is likely to become a dictatorship from a historical perspective. Whether it would be a good thing or not is up to other people to decide. That's not really my position. I'm a historian. I do things looking at them in the past. I'm not saying I have faith in the US government. Please note, I'm not saying that. I have faith in politicians and people who are in public service being people in public service and politicians, and the fact that the codified constitution is set up to set the various sections of government at each other's throat. It's one of the interesting things I have when people start talking about the British, and they start, someone says things like, oh, well, this goes against the whole idea of separation of powers. The British government constitution does not have any concept of separation of powers. We do not have a codified constitution. We have a tradition. We have a history. But you also have to remember that the largest party in the House of Commons is the one that forms the government, and therefore the leader of the government, i.e. the leader of the executive, is also the leader of the largest party in the legislative. Now they're kept in check by the fact that they're head of government, not head of state. You can argue. But it's also why there's a small problem when people start going, well, the Supreme Court, and you sit there and go, yeah, well, the trouble is the Supreme Court the Supreme Court draws its power from the power the legislative have given it. There is no codified constitutional document which provides it with its power and framework for relationship. It's automatically subordinate to the legislative, because that's where the power comes from. It's where the power comes from, because the legislative is basically in a representative democracy. The public basically go, right then, we're too busy living our own lives. We are going to delegate you the authority to exercise our power in terms of running a country. Great, thank you very much. That's the representatives go off, and they form governments, and they vote through laws, and it's from them you get everything else. And if there's no codified constitution, that is the system. Okay, that is the system. Which causes great fun. Great fun. Because the trouble is, a lot of people are far more understanding of the American system and used to the American terms, and then they start trying to apply them to the British, and they're going, what is this? And you sit there and you watch Twitter, and I just don't get involved, because I'm just going, yeah, that doesn't exist in the British system. That's not the way the British system works. It's just not. Clarke, given how the Dover barrage, its mines, nets, and searchlights were effective in World War One, and no historical fact, do you think it was inspiration for the socialist net in the GA-UK gap? I wouldn't say it's the Dover barrage, but there have laying down hydrophones as defences for key areas and to provide information about what ships and submarines are doing in those areas had been going on for a long time before the socialist gap, and a long time even in World War One and World War Two. It's a common thing for hydrophones to be laid down. Consider why were Axis battleships so ineffective in gun battles on average? I'd say it's, in terms of the Italians, it's because of their quality control over their ammunition. In terms of the Germans, I would honestly say it's their turret design which causes them issues. Although there again, no one's immune to that, so in a nice way, they're about the same in some regards. And the Japanese, well, the Japanese don't really have as much capital ship combat as others do. The Japanese built a transport ship just to transfer gun turrets from warships being scrapped on the treaty terms to coastal locations. Mm-hmm. It was the Law Lords, and what was it called? Was it the High Court? No. There was the Law Lords before it became the Supreme Court, and it is less than 15 years old. It's all sorts of fun things. Razak, you're restoring parts of my sanity. Civics should be required in school. I teach this because I teach A-level politics occasionally for revision courses, and I teach, of course, history. And one of the key things I take people through, and one of the key questions that comes up year on in exams, is codified versus uncodified constitutions, advantages and disadvantages. And there are huge advantages and disadvantages to both. But the question that often comes up is, people go, should Britain have a codified constitution? And the argument usually boils down to as, yes, it should. Then you ask the question, well, if that's the case, then who should write it? And that's where the problems come up. Because who is going to be trusted to write the constitution? Would you trust, would people trust the Tory government to write it? Would they trust the Labour government to write it? And that's a problem. And you're going to need to vote it through, and it's going to have to be voted through by a referendum. We all know how divisive they can be. What is the Constitution going to make of the sort of semi-federated state of the UK, in that we have some devolved powers and parliaments, in terms some devolved assemblies, etc., in terms of Northern Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, but England doesn't have it. So if you have a debate over a codified or uncodified constitution, you want Britain to have a codified constitution, you suddenly have to start answering all these questions, which become very thorny political debates. Very, very thorny political debates, and all sorts of problems arise. And it's the whole thing is, yes, in theory, a codified constitution is an advantage. However, in practice, actually implementing one in the United Kingdom, oh, good luck. But which historians would you trust to write it, Mark Harness? That's the question. Which historians? And, you know, you probably need lawyers and you want, you know, all sorts of people involved. And, yeah, I see, John Evans had just wrote, wouldn't trust the Tory government to write a Christmas card. That's fine. But some people would have the same saying about a Labour government. Some say have a Liberal Democrat government. Yeah, it's fun. I was like, right, you need a separate election to elect people to draft the Constitution. And imagine who could get elected by an election, because let's be honest, elections are usually popularity contests. And do you really want the people who are being elected, being the people who are best at selling themselves in sound bites and thinking in 10 words or less, or those people who are actually going to think of the next 10 words and 10 words after that and 10 words after that? It's just a nightmare. Look, all I will say is I have heard enough stories about what goes on at Tudor historian conference, Tudor history conferences, and the Tudor historians get up to, and quite how interesting they can be with each other. That life is. I'm not sure I would go there. Now, it comes around. Why? Tim Golden. Two possible questions for me. One, is the sci-fi Star Trek best or pre-World War II question choice to you? I don't mind. I'll have either. Or both. Reckon, what are your thoughts on scrapping USNS Hidden? Okay, I am looking that one up to check I'm talking about the right thing, because let's be honest. That's the East German corvette, isn't it? A Tatul class corvette. I would love to see it maintained, but there's another preserved in the world, and there were roughly 80 built, and I think there are some still in service. The Russians still have 21 in service, theoretically. The Vietnamese still have roughly 12 in service. Yeah, I would love it to see it preserved, but that's because I don't like any ship to be scrapped. Not because it's really potentially going to disappear if it isn't preserved. So Thompson, if you were to design a ship for one body of water that would be able to perform similarly across the globe, what body of water would you choose to design? I would take the roughest piece of ocean possible, probably the South Atlantic. And I would design my ship around being able to operate there, because if it can operate there, it can operate anywhere. And then I'd add in air conditioning, and then it can operate in hot climates. Blackback Maximus, what impact would the steam boilers from Atlantis, the Lost Empire's Ulysses, from Atlantis, Lost Empire's Ulysses, on World War I and World War II, assuming they use minimal to no air to heat the water into steam? You'd have a lot of very efficient ships going around. Let's say, if the Americans or Japanese didn't get their battlecruiser carrier conversions, wouldn't they build another Hosho and Langley? Potentially, but let's be honest, Langley is a conversion of a Collier. Hosho is something they've built from scratch, but it's a test bed. It's not an actual planned carrier. So, honestly, they might build another Hosho. I doubt the Americans would build another Langley. They'd probably build something different. Peter Dawson, the UK has a constitution. It's just written on 20 plus documents. It's not really a constitution, because the point I would make is it's not considered a codified constitution, because whilst it is written on, there are elements of what we would consider to be a constitution, that sort of defined procedure in a way the constitution would, across 20 plus documents. It is not a single document which is required for a constitution. It's not a codified, and all those documents can be edited at any point by the legislature at the will of the legislature. Whereas if you think about it, for a constitution to be edited and changed, it requires more than just the legislature to just sign off on it. So it is not considered a codified constitution. The UK has an uncodified constitution. It's across. There's various parts of it across 20 plus documents. This that inform procedure and decisions and how these things are done. But there's also a whole load of traditions and other things which are part of that, which are also included in the UK constitution, which are not written down in those sort of documents, but still have a bearing on it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. The UK has one. It has a constitution, but it's not a codified constitution. There is a difference between those two things. So, if the 1930 treaty ends up in the British Empire walking out, in terms of priority and construction, what will be first on the list of the British build? In 1930, it's going to be probably, let's see, 33, that's easy, that would be an aircraft carrier. It's 1930 fast capital ships. Probably aircraft carriers not long after that, and cruisers. Question, Steve Clarke, question, is the final battle sequence of Wrath of Khan one of the best representations of the form of submarine warfare in space? It's fairly good. Nemo, the Espana class, what could be done on 15,000 tons? What could be done in Spanish yards? Not bad, but they're not great either. What is the best book on the Battle of Jutland, 1916? There are many good books, but I do have a favourite. But I'm not sure if it's around me. It might be, he says, it might be, there you go. Well, there is the Naval Staff Appreciation, which is always fun. And there is the Jutland Scandal, which is always a good one. And that one what I think it is? No, that's not what I think it is. Oh, Skagerrak. Basically, you really need. This is going to sound terrible. This is the official report produced under Beatty, so this is what Beatty wanted you to think of the Battle of Jutland. This is the reports written by other people other than Beatty about what happened at Jutland. This is the German reports of what happened at Jutland. You really want all three of these to understand Jutland. Well, no, to even have a start of understanding Jutland. Fort Bourne, hello. Thoughts on the viability of nuclear strike cruisers the US Senate proposed in the 80s? There would be no peace of an end. They would have been very, very useful right now because they would present the US Navy with an advantage in that they could go from... Because they've got rid of the Perrys and the LCS haven't stood up and the Constellations aren't yet in service. Basically, everything in deployment is a Burke. And so they have no gratiation in naval diplomacy. They're either deploying a Burke or a carrier battle group, or an amphibious task group. So it's either a lot of firepower or overwhelming firepower. There's no gratiation in response. If you have the strike cruisers, then you have something between you can deploy. It's a case of, we deployed our Burke. Okay, you haven't taken notice. Hello, meet a strike cruiser. This shows our level of serious intent. Next thing that turns up is a carrier battle group, and if you keep playing trouble with that one, then that's going to start. That's going to do a well, as what's it called? Foxtrot Alpha. Foxtrot. Oscar. And so it's kind of useful. Good afternoon. I'm working on Naval Battle for a book. There's a carrier being chased by a somewhat overweight battlecruiser. There's a very strong tailwind, and the carrier is too close to turn for launch, so it's basically stuck running. A pre-dreadnought hears the call for help and is able to position itself immediately upwind of the carrier and charge down through. The carrier makes an avoidance maneuver, leaving the battlecruiser at very short range from the pre-dreadnought. The plan is that it gives the carrier time to launch and destroy the battlecruiser. How do you think the battle will go? I'd say the pre-dreadnought probably destroys the battlecruiser before the aircraft get around. Let's put it this way, there is a reason why Goban doesn't want to come out and take on Lord Nelson and Agamemnon. Those are powerful vessels, and if they're in range of those guns, they have armor, and they have a lot more solid construction than necessarily a battlecruiser will. So, yeah. They get caught there, they've got a problem. Nice one. Would it be accurate to say that King George V class really should have been 40,000 plus tons from the beginning? You could certainly make them 4 quadruple 14-inch guns on that, so that's some tonnage. Nice one. Given the British did look at quadruple 15-inch guns, if the King George V had 10 15-inch guns, does it make them better or worse armed? It makes them better armed. It also makes them probably better armed. 10 15-inch guns probably has a greater weight of fire than 9 16-inch guns, so they're probably out. They've probably got a better rate, weight of shot of fire than potentially they would equal the Iowas for their super heavies if you've got 10 15-inch. It's not far off. It's gonna be close, and that's just rough maths in my head. Before calculating in the effective rate of fire. So, what's the name of an RN ship, a ship for the Royal Navy that you find spiteful, outrageous, and funny? Oh, the sheer number of ships in the Royal Navy history which are named for the King Louis XIV. In fact, honestly, have a look through them. Ships named for King Louis XIV, and you find the sheer number of them. At one point, I think the Royal Navy was sending a fleet against the French, which was 2/3 ships named for Louis XIV. Or at least had their history in ships named for Louis XIV. Blackman Masters. Oh, Steve Clarke. Who wrote the first book debunking the BT version of Jutland? That would be this one. Literally. Harper and Bacon. They literally wrote the book in response to BT. So you can buy this. It's Vice Admiral John Harper, and Admiral Reginald Bacon. Harper wrote the original report, which is butchered by BT. So he just published his report, which he turned out he had copies of. BT didn't realise he kept them. And Admiral Bacon is just hates BT. It's just glorious. Saratoga and Lexington versus Akagi and Kaga and Surf Battle. How would it go in early 1942? If they've got no aircraft on them, it's going to depend who can run fastest, because that's the only way it's going to change. They've got guns they can damage each other, but basically they'll just either end up sinking each other, or... Well, let's be honest. Akagi can possibly outrun Saratoga and Lexington, possibly. But Kaga is going to get swarmed by them. And then Akagi's on her own. Darren, you said at Jutland the British battlecruiser should not have joined the battle line. What if BT had moved out ahead of Jellicoe? Then taking 3rd battlecruiser squad, he'd gone down the German line outside their gun range. Could he have crossed behind the German line? Could he have stopped the German escape? Potentially. Or potentially he could have made it difficult enough that they actually couldn't turn that way. He would have probably the manoeuvre would have forced Speer to focus his ships in a different direction. Scheer to focus his ships in a different direction. That's very fun. What would the British have designed that would be more terrifying than incomparable K3 and L3? No idea, but I'm sure they'd have given it a jolly good try. Have you seen the B5 animated film? Not sure. Nearco 4000. Was HMS Warspite ever not angry? It is, and is giving a spin the same name and therefore presumably same machine spirit-wise. She seemed to be okay when she was having her Cornish retirement. So basically keeps supplying with her cream teas and views at St Michael's Mount. That's right. If the British built their original timeline 12 13.5-inch super dreadnoughts with 15 13.5-inch guns in 5 triples, and on the original timeline 4 13.5-inch battle cruisers with 12 13.5-inch guns in 4 triples, how much crying among the Iron rivals would there be? Well, honestly, the Germans would be out for a count, because that's a solid weight of firepower. That's a solid fire plan. So they would have to develop either a new turret or something to match that in that one. The French French don't count. The Italians would go, woohoo, you've joined us in the triple fight. The Americans would be adding on guns onto their ship designs so they could have more firepower. And the Japanese would probably be ordering something. Are we assuming 10-15-inch 50s? Otherwise known as the Henderson beats Chatfield up with a stick scenario. Granted, he did it in real life. I mean, even with more with a stick. That'd be fun for the hour. If Henderson got his 15-inch 50s and 10-15-inch 50s, that would be a very interesting King George V. I think there's another possibility that if... Well, the thing is... Henderson liked the triple turrets because they already had it and they knew they could make them work. And he liked the 15-inch guns. So if you get 12 15-inch 50s on 4 triple turrets, the thing was, I think he felt he could make it work. If he managed to make it work in tonnage, that's a very interesting ship. Nemo, any plans to send dreadnoughts to the Mediterranean to help the French had Italy join the Central Powers in World War II? 1. Could Jellicoe have opposed such a thing? It was going to be pre-dreads sent to help the French, and honestly, the Royal Navy would have just had to keep building dreadnoughts. In the nicest way, the whole idea of cancelling R-class or anything would have been out the window the moment the Italians joined the war. And the idea of building large light cruisers would have just been forgotten. I would never pick my own book as my favourite book because, as much as I love it, it would be incredibly biased. Favorite naval history book, probably Andrew Lambert's Admirals. If I have to pick one, but honestly, I've got so many. I like them all. Runon, I think that's the second part to your question coming, so I'm going to leave that one till your next part appears. Enterprise was blessed with a superb plot armor, but did the Yorktowns do anything better than the Essex? And what did the Essex design team learn from the Yorktown design team? I would argue that in many ways the Essex design is a stripped down Yorktown, in that it's focused in on stripped down in terms of making it faster to produce. It's not necessarily stripped down in capabilities. In fact, in many ways it's got better capabilities. But I would say it's stripped down in terms of making it faster to produce. Runon, if Japan opens up the Pacific against only the British, do we see the RN order capital and cruiser assets from US yards? No, but I do think the Lions will get completed. The RN will probably order more ships to be repaired in American yards if they have to, but they'll probably just be getting their stuff built, and that I would point out that they could pretty much do that. How likely is it that had the Royal Navy not been made to keep the fleet of ships that the Fisher would scrap in the 1900s, that the RN would have reorganised the fleet before the sudden 1900s? They weren't made to keep the fleet. This is one of the things. People must understand why the Royal Navy has such a large fleet in the early 1900s before Fisher cancelled them. It's because they have to be everywhere. It's the same problem the Americans find themselves in at the moment. You have to be there. So what's the cheapest? To build a new ship or just keep an old ship going? Well, at that point, just keep an old ship going. Keep the stations covered. Keep the places under control. That's right. Were the 8 RA Revenge class Super Dreadnoughts really supposed to replace the 10, 12-inch armed ships? They were the start of it. They were going to replace the 8 oldest. And if you consider there are theoretically 6 Queen Elizabeth class, you've got 14 15-inch gun ships coming in. And yeah. Dagon, you have to name a Star Trek fleet carrier. She carries 500 fighter bombers, 6 Defiant class escorts, 6 Sabre class escorts, along with 3 Akira heavy cruisers and a Sovereign class battleship. Plus, if she's carrying all that, she's not a fleet carrier. She's Armageddon. The Avenger. Because honestly, that's the most aggressive name the Starfleet would probably allow for a ship. It's in the true motto of the Avengers. They might not stop you, but they will definitely avenge anything that happens to the Federation. What a displeasure! Why do I have a poodle? Is your sissy home? Has she left Mummy? And you've come out to say hello to me. Okay. Alright, you've come out to say hello to me. That's fine. So you want payment for coming to say hello to me, right? You want payment, of course you do. Sorry, we have a guest. Ow, those are my fingers. Seriously. Yeah, I know you want the biscuits, but not the fingers as well. Oh, thank you. Yeah, you've taken over now. You've taken over. You're on to any questions, right? Hello. Hello, yes, of course. There you go. So, out of the ships Fisher scrapped, how many could he have been used as storage hulks, depot ships, harbour depot ships, and training hulks? Probably quite a few. He's already had his treat. I know he wants more. He always wants more. Ah. Ugh. Thank you. HMS Enterprise. Yeah, she's on the key ship list. She's actually on the key ship for this next. That's why I was one of the reasons I was thinking about her. What are you eating? What are you looking at? Stop doing stupid things. Stop. No, you come over here and stay close to me. Alright, because I'm not sure I trust you. I do apologise there's no short that came out today, but that's literally because I didn't get it recorded in time. Now, how does everyone respond if the British announce they're going to build an 85 to 97,000 ton battleship? Depends when they're going to announce they're going to build it. If they're building it in 1920, there's going to be a lot of people going, ah! If they're building it in the middle of World War II to respond to Yamato, they will probably go, yeah, it's the British response. And long live the long tanners. With the benefit of hindsight, in your opinion, which was the worst, and this is for Raleigh, which was the worst naval decision each should make in combatants of World War II? Okay, well, what do you think? What was the worst decision?
Okay, now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, worst decisions. Well, the British, it's quite common, really. It's the pause of the capital and carrier construction, specifically the carriers. Capital ships you can pause, probably, but carriers you shouldn't have. Then we have the Italians. They really needed better destroyers. They really did. They needed the Roma class sort of light cruisers needed to be sort of done. I think they're the Roma class. Might be the captain. Romani sort of light cruisers. The Germans needed to remember they were building destroyers, not small cruisers, and that was just silly. And well, for the Americans, don't get Pearl Harbored. Seriously, share information with your admirals. It helps them. And for the Japanese, don't declare war on someone who has enough infrastructure to stomp you in their sleep. There you go. Answers from Raleigh. The French played in 1920s the idea of building 17,500 ton heavy cruisers armed with 12-inch guns. The 17,500 ton heavy cruisers are not allowed on the Washington Naval Treaty. You're allowed 10,000. You're not allowed. That's battleships. Those are not heavy cruisers. The moment it's over 10,000 tons, it's into capital ship territory, because the treaties are very clear that only in the Washington Naval Treaty, anything under 10,000 tons is not restricted in any way, shape, or form. Anything over 10,000 tons is restricted. It's one of the reasons why the Japanese believe there's a, if you get your aircraft carrier in under 10,000 tons, well, hey, you're free. Alliance, when is the next Build From episode? When we have a chance to record it, because honestly, the trouble has been all of us keep being randomly busy. No, we're not doing more Raleigh questions. Did the British consider keeping any of their armoured and protected cruisers post-World War I, or were they certain to go after World War I end? They did consider keeping some of them. They did consider keeping some of them, as if they could be grandfathered into the system. Could the British have designed a dreadnought-style armoured cruiser for what will start their armoured cruiser development? They could have done, yes. They could have done. Honestly, they could have gone both routes with the dreadnought armoured cruisers. They could have done two. They could have done some which had the whole the whole sort of capital ship guns, which become the battle cruisers, and they could have had some which are not capital ship guns.
Good boy. Just telling us to see that you're okay. Right, 359. Are there any deceased authors whose notes have not who notes have not survived that you really wish they were preserved? I'm fairly certain quite a lot of authors' notes have not been fully preserved. There are certainly some historians, etc. Roskell is a good example, where I am certain about 1/3 of their notes survive. How did the Channel Dash affect the hunt for Bismarck? It added more to it. It made them more annoyed. It also had, how do I put this, led to a change of procedures in terms of working between the RAF, especially Coastal Command, and the Royal Navy. The French were allowed to use their battleship tonnage to wish. No, they weren't. There are lots of books which claim that, but then go and look at the actual text of the treaty. The French are not allowed to use their tonnage as they wish. If they wish to use it for a capital ship, they can do. But building a heavy cruiser out of capital ship tonnage means you don't have enough capital ship tonnage. And you have to remember the French are locked into a capital ship arrangement where they are equal to that of the Italians. And they can't afford to be building a heavy cruiser when the Italians are building capital ships. Because their heavy cruiser will get sunk every single time. So the French can have all sorts of dreams. And there are all sorts of people who write things, and there are people who write, they can do what they like. But they can't. Because A, the treaty isn't written that way, and B, they have the problem of they're linked into versus the Italians. And as I've said before, the trouble for the French becomes the Mediterranean. Because if your biggest threat, the one you're most likely to have a fight with, is your peer, and it's also the one power who the British are going, well, if you want to fight them yourself. But you need the British because they provide your extra reinforcements to overwhelm the Italians, as well as providing the ability to secure the rest of your empire. If you have to focus all your, you must remember, mirrored assets against the Italians. It's like the British are mirrored versus the Americans. They have far more resources at their disposal. And the Americans are divided over 2 oceans, and the British are divided over 3 oceans. So the British are always weaker in the Atlantic or in the Pacific, in the Far East or anywhere other than in the ocean than the Americans, in the Mediterranean, because the Americans don't have major forces deployed there. But the thing is, the British can concentrate forces and theoretically could overwhelm the Atlantic or the Pacific Fleet if they concentrated their forces. But that would then leave their other areas open to American attack. So it sort of produces a balance of force. Whereas for the French, they have a massive empire to protect in proportion to compared to the Italians. But they can't afford to deploy the forces to protect it because they have to deter the Italians and they're linked to them in numbers. So, yeah, the French can talk about doing these things, but they can't actually do it. It's like, I can talk about flying a 747. Not actually qualified to do it, and I definitely don't have the money to go and do the piloting qualifications necessary to do so. And then there would be the actual time, effort, and fitting that into the rest of my life. No, it's not going to happen. But I can still talk about it. The French can talk about using some of their capital ship tonnage, and lots of people do, for heavy cruisers. But that talk is hot air. It's pontification. It's pointless. So yeah, no. If they did build such cruisers, what did the RN do in the London Naval Treaty? Well, they can no longer rely on the French being actually even able to hold the Italians as equals in the Mediterranean, at which point the Royal Navy Britain might be forced to abandon the French. Think about that. That's the problem for the French. British can no longer rely on the French to hold the Italians and at least counter them in any war scenario, then what purpose do the French serve Britain? Britain might well cut ties. Or cut the closeness of the agreements, in which case you can end up having a World War II scenario where the French find themselves on their own. The British might be fighting in Norway to protect Norway. They might have put up different agreements with the Norwegians under those circumstances. Without having to coordinate with the French, they could have done all sorts of agreements. Because, let's be honest, coordination always delays your actions. Because you're having to talk it through between governments and two political systems. And two sets of people who have to, deal with. Right, so you may have answered this. I think I did answer that one. Stephen Richards, Trento versus Belfast. Belfast has radar, so if it's at night or in any kind of bad weather, Belfast. If it's clear day, Trento. Constant drowsiness. Why did Britain and the US keep going with the London Conference after the Japanese left? Hang on, no. Trento's armour isn't... Well, their armour is better than some of the heavy cruisers. So, potentially it's still Belfast because of rate of fire. But if Trento gets that lucky hit, it could cause a lot of trouble. Why did the Britain and US keep going to the London Conference after the Japanese left? Because they hoped they'd return. Who would World War I be fought against if Germany never formed? Probably Russia. Russia and France, potentially. Robert, are there any books on fighting in the Adriatic during World War II? I'm sure there are several in Italian. I'm not sure many in English. There's one on Baltic, and a couple on the Mediterranean. Now, sir, how reasonable is it that the British innovative nature told them that the protected armour cruisers were done, or was it the expense that pushed them to the heavy cruiser and light cruiser? Neither, really. Heavy cruiser and light cruiser both come from the light cruiser line, well, technically come from the light cruiser and the scout cruiser lines of World War I. The heavy cruiser that they would have probably gone with would have, again, it represents a gradated response, and for monitoring strategic affairs around the world, that helps. No, I haven't seen this news about the Pilosaur discovery. What was the most numerous cruiser class, Doc? Well, potentially it's between the Seas and Town class, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it could be the Seas, but there again, there are some American cruisers which are producing quite large numbers in World War II. That's an interesting question. I'd have to look that one up to be sure. Well, there's always the theory that they could win. If everything goes for them, if they have all the luck with them, then yeah, they can win it. That's the thing. There's always a chance they could have won them. It's just for them to win, everything would have to go their way, and the opponents would have to make nothing but mistakes. They've gone, you can travel back in time to 1930 with the knowledge, and hopefully funding, of World War II. You can either buy an arms business or create your own business. With what ships, aircraft, tanks would you build? I'd probably buy Vickers. As I'm British and I prefer the British, I would start working on pushing radar up fast, and I would probably fund a 16-inch gun, and I would quite possibly, on my own back as well, aircraft carriers, etc., and push designs of them. I would probably push deck-edge lifts for the British. I'd say, look, in a nice way, the deck-edge lifts will help and allow you to have more space. And if I'm in 1930, yeah, I can push a few things. Deck edge lifts going to give me slightly more aircraft for British carriers. I've got control of Vickers. I've also got control of Supermarines, so I can get on with the Royal Navy fighter program. Yeah, I can do quite a lot from there. So you got the most underrated innovation of World War II. Mine would be escort carriers. Well, that's not a World War II innovation. There's something called HMS Argus. Converted ocean liner. It's not a World War II innovation. It's a World War II expansion on an idea, but the idea has already been around for a while. Innovation of World War II. Radar controlled gunnery. Actually, thought no angled flight deck. You don't need angled flight deck till you have jets. And whilst I'd love to develop jets, that's a metallurgy and all sorts of other funding which have to go in that. Whereas decent pistoned aircraft are quite easily able to be got at, and the other things you can do are going to make things a lot easier. So that's not going to be a high priority for me. And British AK-47 sounds good until you realise that doesn't fit the British doctrine of fighting. So the British doctrine of fighting is precision shots, not spray and pray. One reflects a highly professional military force. The other one reflects an armed force which was often facing issues of having entire sections of officers and NCOs wiped out because of political arguments. There is a difference going on there. Jordan, weirdly, if you had an autopilot and a pilot instructor on radio talking to you, actually be pretty likely you could fly or could take off and fly and land some of a sudden because of how good tech is now. Probably, but you know, it still makes my point. Would the British have been better off not returning to gold standard after World War I? Yes. Waited a longer time. It's a lovely in theory idea. It's an absolute destructive position in practice. At the start of European hostilities in 1939, the Britain gains access to a dry dock that can produce clones of any ship, but only of the first class put into it. Which class is chosen? It can produce clones of any ship. Well, the easy answer is to say an escort, and then just churn out them by the ton, and have them for various operations. But the trouble is, you can do that anyway with the yards available, and they do. So realistically, what you want is a larger ship which takes more effort and time to produce that you can clone. Now, at that point, you're left with town-class cruisers as an option, Ark Royal as an option. She's available at the beginning of World War II. None of the King George V's are available, and you don't want to do any of the older ships. Even modernised HMS Warspite, etc. You don't want to do that. Renown isn't in service yet. Isn't back in service yet, so leave that to one side. So realistically, you have town-class cruisers and Ark Royal. You've got the Crown colonies under construction. You've got not enough carriers coming in. Ark Royal. Hood has to be modernised. There's no point putting an unmodernised ship through, and there's no point putting through a ship which is. This is why I said Renown, because Renown's been modernised. So in the nicest way, if you put your ship which hasn't been modernised, you would clone it and then you'd have to modernise it. So you'd have to take it. You'd have to take months to get it served. So there's no point. You want to put a ship which is as modern as capable as you can. So it's either a noun, Warspite, which isn't really fast enough, or you don't need as many as that of that, or you need something new ship. In which case you're left with a town class, or you're left with Ark Royal. From Chicago, Kirk or Picard? Picard, usually. I would, I'd actually say my order of captains go Cisco, Janeway, Picard, Kirk. I can never remember the names of the current ones. Pike is good. But no, I can't. I know Discovery's one. I haven't seen many episodes of Discovery, and it was a long time ago. Seeing as I've seen the Pike ones with Pike in recently, and I can never remember the name of number one, but I think that's a really good character. But it's a case of Spock's sister. I'm not sure why, but I never really. It's always felt more of a story about her than it about the ship. Whenever I've seen the episodes in Discovery, I might have, because I've only seen a couple of about 2 or 3 episodes. It might be that it might be that which is oh well, it might be those episodes. But it's always seemed more about her than the ship, if that makes sense. Or praise back. How could Japan have altered its defensive perimeter or strategy to make it more efficient or effective? They need more submarines. They need more submarines. Lions, I'd have thought that the tribals would have been a good option. The trouble is, they're destroyers, and as much as it's going to sound strange, destroyers and escorts are all ships which you can build in numbers anyway. And you're able to build in numbers. So again, think of it, if you don't have to build another think of it this way. If you are able to clone Ark Royals as many as you like, you don't have to worry about building any other carrier for World War II. You can cancel all carrier construction for the rest of World War II. So you don't have to build a Unicorn, you don't have to build any of the Implackables, Illustrious class, probably finish off the Illustrious class, but you know what I mean. You don't have the light fleet carriers, you don't have any of that construction needs. So compared to how quickly you can then start churning out escorts and even capital ships if you want, with the yards that are freed up by it, it makes sense to go with Ark Royal. So without World War I interfering, how are you supposed to say 1914-16 all 6 Queen Elizabeth class super dreadnoughts, and by 1916-18 all 8 Revenge class would join the fleet? You'd probably be talking You would probably be talking sooner than that. I would reckon the R's would be in by 1917. So it'd be 1915-17 for the R's and 14-16 for the Queen Elizabeths. Because the R's, again, you're going to get a lot of speed of production going on there because of because there's 8 of them and because they're ordered over 2 years. Not 92. You're in charge of. Hang on, no. Colin Cameron. So you would not push the EM2 for World War II, as that fits doctrine. No. All 92. You're in charge of procurement office for the Albanian Navy, but secretly on the payroll of the enemy. What would you buy from the various navies that seems good but is terrible in effect? Which period? When? With 2 Queen Elizabeths laid down 1912, 3 Queen Elizabeth 3R laid down 1913. World War I thing, you see 1 Queen and 5 R's in 1914. And it's likely that new battle cruisers laid down 1915 replaced the 6 12-inch battle cruisers. Yep. That's alright. Which Star Trek captain was a better ship handler? Personally, I think it's Janeway. I'd say Janeway has the more strategic turn, but I remember the episode where Picard piloted his ship. And he was frigging good at piloting that ship, so I'm going to go with Picard. Although, if you wanted me to guess to go for the best pilot, it would be... Oh, what's her name? Jadzia Dax. Although she does have the advantage of being around for a long, long time, of having a lot of experience. Late 1930s. Oh, if I want to do if I'm Elbonian Navy and I want to make the Elbonian Navy to be various trouble, I'm gonna go for Bismarck class per capital ships with Italian produced shells. I'm gonna go for Japanese destroyers. No, German destroyers, actually. They're well produced, but they're not good at being destroyers. Japanese light cruisers, because there's no way I can justify the German light cruisers are that terrible. Whose submarines am I going to go for? Italian, Japanese, they're all too good. Dutch are too good, American too good. No one has really submarines. Early Soviet submarines. Early Soviet submarines. You know, a nice mixture. St. what was the first cruiser class to be first to use oil-firing boilers? Oh, good lord. Let's see. That's an interesting question, because I'm currently looking up to try and compare when the American and the British ships came into service. The British certainly had destroyers from 1904 onwards. Let's see. Ooh, no. Is it the Italians? Did the Italians get in there first? No. Cruiser. I think it might have been the American ships who got in there just about first, but I'm not 100% sure. Honestly, I'd have to do a lot of research because it's trying to work out exactly which one launched first. Because the British one commissions before the Americans, but that might not mean that it didn't launch after the Americans, because the British tend to be faster at getting theirs through the commissioning process than the Americans. So I'd want to look that one up and do a lot of digging into that one. Did anyone ever write an answer to what Britain would have done if the Home Guard didn't maroon Operation in the Sea of the Fire of lightning the English Channel? No. That's right. How did the Germans respond to the British building a dreadnought, free Bellerophon with one dreadnought, free Bellerophon with 10 12-inch guns and free Simmers and one shooting? What? 12 12-inch guns and 2 Colossus with 14 12-inch guns. Well, the response they did historically. Is there a British submarine class you would classify as a key ship? I think I'm going to be... I was planning on doing this. I think I've done some subs in the key ship series. I seem to remember I'd done some subs. No, I haven't. So what I'll do is I'll add them into the things to come. Because I've got a space. Because I'm adding in more key ships because I'm not sure what's coming up in terms of medical appointments next few days and weeks. So I want to be sort of prepped. So ignore the dates below them, because honestly the dates can mean anything. They can mean anything. Given that it would force more emphasis on ISW and subs, have asymmetric advantages. Why did Japan build more submarines? Honestly, resources to build the batteries. Hello, Jack Ray. Right, dates can mean anything? Actually anything? Well, it's basically a case of, you know how I tend to put dates on the beginning of slides on the date it's supposed to go up? I apologise because the dates might get moved. So the videos might... I'm planning on recording the videos, and they might come out on the right date. They might not. So, what about Captain Archer and Annex 101? He was a test pilot for Earth and a founding secretary of the Federation. Yeah, but Archer is also a bit of a... And honestly, anyone who takes their dog into space and doesn't take their dog onto a bridge on a regular basis so we get more of Porthos in the story is not going to get my tolerance. Clarke, did any Navy do development of free access stabilizers for their fire control before or during World War II? The Dutch. And that's why the British take the Dutch ships apart when they get hold of them, and that's why the earliest stable 3-axis stabilized mounts on the Royal Navy ships were Haysmere, which were based on Dutch systems. Represa, were there any Japanese naval officers who went anti-Kentekessen and how abandoning that after that altered the Japanese shipbuilding plans? I've already done a whole video on this, on the Kentekessen and on its effects on shipbuilding plans, etc. There are lots of other doctrines other than Kentekessen, so, you know. Sorry, how does the British changing things with the 13.5-inch and 15-inch guns if their 12-inch armed ships had 12-inch 50s Cal Mark 15-inch guns? Well, if the British are producing 12-inch 50 Cal Mark 15 guns, then in the nicest way they're going to continue with 50 cals for the others. It means they're probably using the built-up methodology of gun construction as well. So if they're doing that and they're producing 50 cal versions of their guns, it might mean that you have a 15-inch 50s and 50-inch 35s, or at least 45 35s, 13.5s, and 45 15s. But I would say probably 50s. Craig H. Any names you can think of for the Type 83s? I'm going to go for Duke of Edinburgh class. Southend. Subs for the key ship series. How T-Oats are 10 tubes of joy? Yes, they're going to be in it. I've put the T&S class in. Nice one. Who had the better cruiser submarines? The French with the Surcouf class, twin 8-inch, or the British M class with a single 12-inch gun? They were both terrible. I don't want to pick between them. That's like picking between two mutually twittish decisions. Blackman Maximus, if instead of the aircraft submarines, they have a nice idea behind them, but it's actually making it work, it's just no. If instead of the aircraft submarine, Japan went for a largest mine-laying submarine force, what effect would it have had a scenario with no Pearl Harbor and just the Philippines and attacked by Japan? If they'd gone for building the equivalent large long-range submarines of that size, but with mine-laying capacity rather than aircraft deployment capacity, they could have put minefields up across the west coast. So Richard, Sebastian New Jersey Channel was asked if they were their own power to get to the dry dock. Is there any personnel left in Macrua? Probably there are some personnel who could crew from the last time she was activated, or the last time that Iowas were active in service. If she has her own power, getting her to dry dock, it's still going to require tugs. It's just going to be interesting. Check right. Pick between Bern and 1930s German light cruisers. That's just evil, and I'm not going there. Yeah. Nice one. Does the 32,000 ton for Furious and 36,000 ton for Glorious and Courageous sound about right if they were built as big as they should have been? Potentially, fully loaded, yes. Sometimes, by the looks of things, the Type 26 will be going into service when they start cutting out the steel for the Type 83s. Into refit when they start cutting the steel for the Type 83s. Will Black Prince be joining Dukes? Potentially, but it's a case of... It'll be interesting to see how they split that around the refits programs versus the rebuild programs. Besides, refits are going to be slightly more constant for the Type 26s, I have this feeling. I have this feeling Type 26s, Type 31s and 32s, and whatever comes next are going to constantly going through refit, because I think we're entering a period of technological transition. Nice one. How likely is it the RN-67 petrol-electric submarines were going to go after World War I? Likely. pretty likely. They knew diesel-electric was better. Let's be honest, you want to try and reduce the amount of combustibles you have aboard a submarine. It's not a good place to have things which are combustible. I am going to say now I'm going to finish it at about half 10 tonight, in 10 minutes, because I don't know if you noticed, but I actually am noticing I'm slowing down. And I think that's because of tiredness, but also because I haven't eaten today. And I am going to go get some food, because I've just been sent a message saying that there is mince to cook in the house, and I'm going to go cook it. I'm sorry about that, but as I said, it's been an interesting day. And my sister is home, so I will go cook her dinner. Because otherwise she'll try and cook me my dinner, and I just don't want to face that one. Proposal. USS Arizona is going to be commissioned as a submarine. I think it's a terrible idea. Aside from the hood, what RN ship names do you think should never be reused? You see, I'm not that. You see, the thing is, I'm British. We are not that obsessive over not reusing names. I realise Hood is not being reused because of what happens to it, but we've reused a lot of ships which we have lost over the years. We've reused them. If you consider what's happened to some of the ships with some of the names which are reused quite regularly, Ark Royal we reuse, and she was lost, and frankly that's far more embarrassing than Hood, which was lucky shotted. If we consider the I-class names, they were reused a lot. So, yeah. Reuse them. If they've got history, reuse them. Try not to repeat the same mistakes. If the M-class diesel-electric cruiser submarine, HMS M1, HMS M2, had not sunk in an accident, which of the two designs might have been chosen for further development? Neither. They're both terrible. The whole idea of a cruiser submarine... Okay, let's say. The whole idea of a cruiser submarine is flawed from the beginning, because the idea is you have a submarine which can keep up the fleet, can go out and do cruising operations, engage targets on the surface with guns, which is far more efficient than using torpedoes to try and sink merchant ships, because you can never carry as many torpedoes as you can get shells, and then go down below the water and hide from surface ships. It's not good. It's not good. Probably a K3L3 for hybrid fast battleship 96831 on that question. How do you use the stuff I sent on Discord comments? No, I haven't. I'm sorry, I haven't. It's just not been conducive at the moment to doing a lot of things. If you notice, the patron questions, patron topics, I'm not sure what is live and what is not. At some point tomorrow, I'm going to log into Patreon and check whether it's got the patron suggestions live and whether I've got the suggestions on there to do the patron patron questions for January. If I have, great, and I'll put it and get it to go live. If I haven't, I'm going to be delayed. But I will do my best to do that, because frankly, it needs to be done, but it's just so much is going past me around. No, are we in the breach of the 1890s, 1910s, or 1930s in regards to age of transition? That's an interesting question. And what's even more interesting is suggesting that those are separate areas of transition. Sometimes in periods of transition, some piece of technology are transitory. HS Verdun. Following Ryan's question on New Jersey, are the US names that should always be in commission? Obviously Enterprise, Johnson, Samuel B. Roberts, and I'd say Constellation and certain things like that. I would say the 6th original frigate should always be in commission. I'm sorry, what did the British do if they know early on, know in the early part of the rearmament, that Germany is planning to build 703 Type 7 U-boats and 219 Type 9 U-boats and 50 Type 2 U-boats? Well, for starters, they have a crystal ball, because at any point, because Germany's not even planning to build those at that time. Germany ends up building those, but at no point are they planning to build those. So they have a crystal ball. They're not learning about German rearmament plans. They're learning about what Germany will build in World War II. And what they probably do, order more of a building of the Flower class corvette. If they earn enough, they're building sloops and they're building Flower class corvettes earlier. Sim Rogers, how about Cisco when he pilots the Defiance against the Vulture class cruiser? Very good, but Picard, if I remember correctly, pilots the Enterprise through an asteroid field to get away from a power-sucking trap with no power. That's skill. Hey. Why did the Royal Navy only build 12 R-class diesel-electric hunter-killer attack submarines? Well, they are the ones built in World War One that are eventually, how do I put this? I would suppose it's the U class which are really their spiritual successors, not the S class. Honestly, because why did they need to build more? In 1918, why do they need to build more than 12? A nice way, World War Ones are finishing. Who do they need these submarines against? They might as well take the time to do the same as they're doing with the capital ships, digest all the information, put together all the best engineering and understanding they have, and then build their next generation of boats. Don't build anything like the K class again. Nights ago for one. That's it. Simple. The disaster was we tried too much. Sorry. Oh, right. I'm going to say thank you very much, Aaron. And as said, I'm going in about 5 minutes, so last questions, please. Very cool, Stafford. Suggestions for Drake for Type 83 names. Thanks, Jack Ray. Thank you, everyone. Alright, also there was also Admiral Hood on the Invincible. Yeah, that was a fun scenario. But that wasn't the Hood that the Hood was named for, although his wife, I think, was the one who launched Hatera's Hood. If the RN got all the pre-World War I and World War I submarines in a non-treaty situation, how's the RN submarine development affected? Nice to know, everyone. That feels like a very rushed question, because you've got to add a lot of context to that one. The RN got all the pre-World War I and World War I submarines. When are they getting them? Whose submarines are they getting? Only their own, or are they getting everyone else's? In a non-treaty situation, how is the RN submarine development affected? probably that's a lot more crews, a lot more experience, but then they're going to factor that into next designs. And if they're starting from a larger fleet, they're going to build more of them, which means they're going to have more submarines, which means they're going to gain more experience. So, Clarke, has anyone commanded a ship named after one of their ancestors? Ooh. That's an interesting one. I think one of Sherbrooke's family had commanded... Is it HMS St. Vincent? I think HMS St. Vincent might have been at some point being commanded by someone who was of Sherbrooke's family, and Sherbrooke is of course called is one of his name. His father's name is St. Vincent, so he is descended from that family, I think. But I am not 100% sure. She's only in service from 1909 to 1921, so it's only 12 years. It's like 4 captains maximum, probably less. David Gordon, carrying on from previous question, who built 4 15,000? If you build 4 to 15,000 ton county type cruisers, 2 with 3 triple 9-inch 2-inch guns and 2 with 4 triple turrets, which are supposedly for Chile and Brazil, but tested by who? By the Royal Navy? There is going to be a movie about HMS Voyager from the Centurion Anson expedition. Thoughts will be by Scorsese. Oh, good lord. New York, it's a channel tunnel exists pre-World War II. How do you defend it? Flood or fortifications? Flood. How likely is the Gator-class submarine HMS Albacore was the victim? Same type of hit that destroyed the U-boat sunk by Ventura? No idea. I'd have to look it up. And have a look at a lot more information. David Goulding, I think you were going to ask more of that question. I think. Sorry, my sister's threatening more to cook dinner and other messages. It's fun. It's fun. Alright, I'm gonna say, because it's now is literally 20 seconds to, so I'm gonna say I'm gonna end the Q&A in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to watch it to make sure I end it when I say I did, and I'm going to. Thoughts of Ed Mercer as a Trek captain from Orwell? He would be a very good one. Certainly has the character for it. But there again, so does his executive officer. They both have far more of a character for it than some of the others, and that's a very, very good program. And Q&A. So, make sure that's in live chat form. Thank you very much, everyone, for your support thank you very much for understanding at the moment that the things are not quite normal. I'm going to try and improve things and get things closer back to normal, but there are still issues. As said, I'm spending tomorrow morning putting in a whole load of floorboards. It's going to be fun. Me and a jigsaw are going to be cutting up the rugs, quite literally. Thank you very much everyone for your support. Thank you very much everyone for being so kind and helpful, and thank you. Right. Yeah, I'm going to go get some food, and I'm going to come out and I'm going to record some videos, because I want some videos to cover for the next few days. And honestly, I can't do soaring up in the middle of the night, but I can record a video or two. And then get some sleep, and then do the soaring tomorrow morning after everyone else has woken up. Thank you everyone, and take care. Toodles. Thank you. I normally go for everyone by name. I'm hungry. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you everyone for writing, commenting. Thank you everyone who supports, who does the super chats, the super thanks, who likes the videos, shares them. Thank you everyone who is a patron. All those people. Seriously, it couldn't be done without you, especially not at the moment, because, well, you can guess, job applications are definitely not happening at the moment. So literally, not only is Neva's article writing, so the only thing that's really any income stream at all while dealing with all this is YouTube and Patreon, and so thank you. Without you, nothing would be happening, and I wouldn't be able to keep paying the car parking fees to go visit my mum. Those are extortionate. And it's usually more worse for me, because someone, I'm not going to name names, keeps driving off with the mum's disabled badge and not passing it over to me. Not that we're using it, honestly, to do the parking fees in the hospital. Take care, thank you, and have fun. That's supposed to be the Bruships we mentioned, right?